Rashmi, for joining us. My name is Aarti. I'm a volunteer with One Future Collective, and we're really happy to have you on this and talk to you about your experiences volunteering over the last year or so for the COVID efforts in India. So, welcome. And why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Just a little
Sure.
background and
Thank you
how you've
so
been
much.
involved. Yes.
Thank you so much, Aarti, for this opportunity. I don't think I'm doing anything different than everyone around us trying to support in this unprecedented time. I am a DEI practitioner, and that has been something of a passion and then career as well. So for me, that has been a very lucky opportunity. And corporate social responsibility was another thing that I was always interested in, worked on, etc. But volunteering is something completely different from all these aspects. It means that you need to give a part of yourself to a particular cause, and you need to be mindful of how you're supporting individuals the way they need or they want to be supported, rather than you putting all your
Mm.
efforts into something where you don't even know what the end person needs to. So that has been something that I've consciously tried to do. And the last 2 years, from the time the first lockdown was announced, I've been thankful for the opportunities that I've got to lend my support, to lend my knowledge actually in terms of how it will help another person. And I never knew that you could do volunteering virtually, but that has been the most fruitful part of my life so far. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get right into it. So tell us what volunteering efforts you're actually involved in. What does that mean from a day-to-day basis? And over the past year, what has the year been like for you?
Yeah. So I'll give you a glimpse of my volunteering life so far, at
Mm,
least in the last 2 years. It all started off with a call to support 4 care homes. I'm calling them care homes because the children in all these 4 centers are not orphans. A few of them have lost their parents, but most of them are kids of single moms who are working in other households, or from other parts of India or Karnataka. So they are at the center. And when the lockdown was announced, these were the most vulnerable group of people, because like other kids, they had nowhere else to go. They had to stay within this center, and
mm,
there was nothing else that these center officials could do to support them. And so they reached out to an organization called as Gift Table, saying that, can you do something to promote the work that we're doing? Can you get volunteers for us? And that's how my first journey started. So I started working, with this group of volunteers to have at least one session a day for these kids. And volunteers could teach anything that they wanted. It could be anything from maths, English, and I didn't want to do the regular subjects, so I chose drama. I didn't realize how difficult it would be, because many of these kids didn't have English as even their second or third language. So it was difficult, but they were very excited to do that. So we did classes for them. We also did a movie screening. And what really touched me was that the screening that I was doing was from my laptop, and it was buffering. And the movie was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And almost 1/4 into the movie, I said, I'm sorry, I don't think this is working really well, because it was buffering too much. And the kids were like, no, no, auntie, it's okay. We want to see what happens, who gets a chocolate at the end of the story.
mm,
And I was so touched, because we complain a lot about YouTube buffering, or signal not being clear, and these kids were grateful for an opportunity to explore a movie that they hadn't seen, and for someone to explain that to them. So I think small things like these really helped me understand the value of the things that we were doing. Once the lockdown lifted, those kids started regular school, so I moved on, and somebody else needed me at that time. It was Ati Jeevan, an NGO that works with people who were acid attack survivors. I was called to do a career counseling session for them. That career counseling turned out to be more of personal counseling, because each of them had a story to tell. Some of them were highly educated, and after the acid attack, life was paused. And there were others who, at the beginning of their journey, had this acid attack, thrown out of the house, and were struggling to fend for themselves. And there were two stories that stood out for me that at that point of time was, there was this guy who had covered his face. And all the other girls were like, even we have got acid thrown on our face, like, why are you covering? And, it was difficult for the guy to even explain that it was his own family who had thrown acid on him for property. And his only question was, Didi, I want to complete my education. Ye ghar wale mujhe ghar se bahar nahi jaane de rahe. And, that was more than career counseling. It was more about getting him the confidence to complete his education and, for him to stand on his own feet. And there was this another story of this lady who had not gone to college or anything. She used to sell trinkets on the Mumbai local. So when the lockdown was announced, she had no way to sell her things. And her English was amazing. And her communication style was amazing. And she was like, Didi, how do I sell when I can't go out? And this is the only thing that will help me. So I asked her, what do you have in your hand? She said, I have a lot of product. I can't do Facebook and Instagram selling because it won't work for product like mine. So I said, what else do you have? She said, मेरे पास बस phone number है सब लोगों का. That means I have everyone's phone number who are my regular customers. And it just came to her saying that, oh, why don't I just make a WhatsApp group and sell? And it was like her own idea. All she needed was a spark to just get that started. So, I think that was another opportunity for me to also reflect on when I keep thinking that, oh, it cannot be done. There's always a can be done through these experiences. So that was something that I did, Aarti. And then another piece was working with this organization called as Lit by Humanity. This is a group of people who came together, and their request was, can you create a database of 100 stories? That's enough. 100 stories for people with visual impairment, so kids with a visual impairment. And we were like, okay, we can do. So 3 of us in that group got together to build the infrastructure because we wanted to put a project management hat to make sure that it's perfect. So we had Google Docs and Drives, and we had almost 100 volunteers who came forward. So we divided the group into a group of people who can read out the story, a group who can do the proof checking, because we wanted to make sure that whatever we give out is of good quality. And then we uploaded all this into a free database so that it could be shared with schools where there are visually impaired students across India, and they could access this 100 stories. And then 100 became 200 stories, and 200 became 300 stories. So that stories was going on in really good josh. We had volunteers from across like 5 different countries volunteering. And then we had a group of older students who reached out and said, we want to write UPSC exam. We want to write the law entrance. We want to write the bank exam. Can you record the question papers of each of these exams and give it to us? So that became another mammoth, process. So we had more people joining us to coordinate each of these projects, and that's going on. Right now, that group has been converted partly into requests from the students, because requests from the students keep coming up. Right now, many of them request us to fill forms for their exams. Just before the lockdown, it was exam time. So a lot of us volunteered to write exams for these visually impaired kids. I wrote an exam on behalf of a kid. He was doing his final year law. And then he made me write almost 40 pages in each of his 3 exams that I wrote for him. And he was like, ma'am, is your handwriting good? So you should see his focus, because he had prepared so well for it. So I had to make sure that my handwriting was good. And I realized one thing that we take for granted. The minute you
Mm.
get a question paper, you read everything, right?
Yeah. Mm.
What would this boy do? So I asked him, shall I read it out for you? He said, yes, okay. And we read it out. He make me mark those points and then go back. And after each answer, he would ask, how many pages have you written? Um, and can you go to the next page so that we can leave some space in case I can come back and review. So I learned
Mm.
a lot through that process. That's been really good. Now what we're doing with Lit by Humanity is a lot of coordination for people almost across India, for people who are requesting for beds with
Mm.
oxygen, or people who are requesting for ventilator support, um, people who are requesting for specific injections, plasma, etc. So we don't have a space where we can provide that, but we know
Mm.
volunteers who can call hospitals and find out if they have
Mm.
something, and then we coordinate with whoever is requested. There have been times where we've not been successful
Mm.
in helping out because of the lack of availability. But there have been cases where we were able to, so that's been good. A lot of visually impaired and people with disability reach out to us because of this network.
Mm.
Again, either for themselves or for their parents to go to the hospital or get the vaccination slot, etc. So that's something that's going on. Yeah.
Wonderful. My goodness. I feel like when you started out, I thought, okay, how did that turn into what I know some of what you've been doing lately. So I was wondering what the connection is, but I didn't realize, Rashmi, that you've been doing so many things. That's really lovely. And you also answered another question I had, which was about some of the heartwarming, happy moments. You
Yeah.
so beautifully shared some of those stories. So thank you. I want to follow up on one thing you said towards the end about, sometimes you're not able to provide support when requested. Can you share a couple of stories about that, or what happened? How did you react? How can one react in those cases?
Yeah. I know it's very difficult at those points of time. And see, when you're volunteering, I think one thing that we need to do is be strong in terms of looking at adversity of all kinds, but sometimes it just gets the better of you. I mean, one
Mm.
example is I was trying to get a bed in the hospital in Bangalore with oxygen specifically for an individual. And the SpO2 of that individual was around 80, 85. So when you
Mm.
reach out to hospitals, they still say it's okay, the person can be under home observation. We don't have any beds.
Mm.
We have cases with 50 SpO2 in the waiting list, so we can't help you.
Mm.
So I was trying for this patient from morning, and by
Mm.
4 o'clock I got the bed, and I called the son of this patient and said, hey, I found a bed for your dad. The minute he picked up the phone and I told this, he just started crying and he said, Rashmi, he's dead. He just passed away. That that was something very shocking, because all
Mm.
my joy of finding that bed, it was for nothing, right?
Mm.
And the next thing he said was, can you find a doctor who can give me a death certificate? It was so difficult. It shattered me a lot, because that was my closest brush with death, like so shocking at that point of time. So it took some time for me to kind of compose myself and uh, work on that. But then I also realized that if me being a bystander feels this kind of a shock, just imagine the kind of emotional trauma that this individual will be going through, the family that must be going through. So the next day I somehow took a lot of energy and called this person again. And I said, and I had reached out to a couple of friends who were doing, a grief counseling, and a lot of people had volunteered their time. And I asked him that, it's important for you to go through this. Would you like a number that you can call whenever you're free? Um,
Mm.
And he was really grateful for that. And he said, I need that. Thank you so much. Um, so I think it's all about helping people understand that there are resources to support them, because there's nothing you can do about some of these cases. So I think that was one experience that helped me understand the value of grief counseling. A lot more people have reached out to find out how they can get it done. I've also shared this with the volunteers as well, because I think even as volunteers, there are times when you reach a point where you know that you've not been able to help someone and you're really frustrated, you need to get it out. I think it's important for volunteers also to, seek therapy wherever possible, so that they can get re-energized and, come back into the system. So that has been a case. Um, yeah, but and this, in the midst of all this, you also have people reaching out saying that, can you help me with a job, or can you help me get a resume? And most of the time it's a person with a disability, a visual impairment, or a physical disability who reaches out to you. uh, and when you speak to them, you realize some of the privilege that you have, which this person doesn't have. So I've tried to contribute to them by helping to create their resumes. And many a times it means having to ask them questions so that they can dig deep and find out what else they have done in life. Make sure that their resume speaks for them. And then I've also helped create LinkedIn profiles for them, so that they get job alerts and it goes directly to their email IDs. I did it for 2 people, and then now it's become word of mouth. And even today I had somebody who called me and started speaking to me in Telugu. And I was like, sorry, I don't understand the language. And then she said, this one person said that you create resumes and LinkedIn profiles. Can you help me? So I think life goes on between health and livelihood. And we need to kind of stretch wherever possible.
That's beautiful. What a lovely message of hope, in spite of, the question was about what do you do when you can't support, but you've turned it around beautifully and reminded us there's always resources, there's always things we can suggest or support somehow. And I think the second message, which is a thread I've heard throughout this call, Rashmi, is life goes on. Uh, Even in the examples of your volunteer efforts, not all of them are directly about medical help for COVID. Some of them are just about supporting livelihood. Some of them were, about education. So I really think that's an important message for our viewers and listeners. So thanks for that. On that note, actually, I wanted to check with you if you have a specific message you want to share with those who are tuning in. What would your message be?
There are 2 things that I want to say. One is, many a times we think that volunteering means getting into the thick of things and being physically present at a particular place to do something, to support another individual. But that doesn't mean that volunteering stops if you're in a virtual world. A couple of my examples clearly will show you that you can do volunteering from wherever you are, whichever part of the world you are. And however small effort that you put in to help somebody else, it just becomes like a domino effect, because that person will then go and help another person, and then it goes on. So I think it'll reinforce your message that humanity is there and it will survive, and we will get through whatever adversity is all around us. So I would highly recommend you do, and it could be as simple as you helping out somebody to get a slot for their vaccination. There were so many people around my house who don't have a smartphone, who don't even understand what this CoWIN app is. And they didn't even know that there is a center where you can go and get your vaccination. So for many of them, I helped them to register and get their vaccination slot, for the 45 plus group. And for others, helping them understand that, yes, these are the centers where you have to go and get a token in the morning, like the public health centers give you a token. Your private hospitals will not give you a token beforehand. So there was these help. So as simple as that, that's all you need to do if you want to volunteer. So that's one message that I'd like to give. And the second thing is to share, to talk whenever you're feeling low. Just find a friend, just find someone who will listen to you. It's really helped me. I have two amazing friends in my life who've listened to every rant I had, every joy that I've wanted to share. So I'm thankful for that. So I would request that you don't bottle up your feelings, bring it out, share with others, seek help when it's needed.
That's a very, very important message, and thank you for repeating that. In fact, that's part of this whole effort that One Future Collective is engaged in, also in connecting those who are seeking support, even if they don't realize it, to those who are providing mental health support. So thanks for that reminder. And on those lines, actually, I wanted to also ask you, how do you manage so many roles? I know that you're not just a working professional, you're not just a volunteer for all these efforts, you're also a mother, a daughter, a wife. How do you manage all these different roles, and what do you do for self-care?
Hmm. I have a secret garden in my terrace. Yeah,
Mm.
many people keep wondering what I grow there because there's only
Grow
one access to
yourself.
it. But no. Yes, that is something that's really helping me
Mm,
because just working with the plants and working in the garden has helped me a lot. I
mm,
also do tanjore paintings. So that's also something which is of a meditative process for me. So that helps. Yeah.
lovely. So, some way to express yourself and to be quiet with nature, to nurture yourself.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right. So, I think one more question, and this is more of a contrast, speaking of growth and change. If you had to compare what last year's experience was during the first wave and now, what has been going on in the last couple of months, what are some major changes in your volunteer efforts, especially, and anything else you want to comment on?
Yeah. I think it's drastic. When 2020 happened, we were thinking that that's the biggest adversity that we've ever faced.
Mm,
Um, and it was more about how to help people with their livelihoods, how
right.
to help people manage or sustain the loss of a business or the loss of regular schooling or working hours, etc. So it was more around a management aspect that came into both the volunteering as well as what I saw outside while speaking to
Mm,
people, because it still was life goes on and there are things that needs to be done. But 2021 is very rude in the way it has happened so far. Rude in the sense the number of deaths
mm,
and the number of um, calamities that have hit us are multiplied by what you see in 2020. So
mm,
2021 has been more in terms of helping people just live.
mm,
It's not even about livelihood now. It's next minute what will happen to me. And
mm,
you can see this in the kind of messages that you get as well. Like, say for example, this whole case of people sending WhatsApp messages of children being orphaned, can somebody take them up? um, you know
mm,
it, I understand the human aspect of people, but also the whole nature of how a calamity that like this can also be used for trafficking or those aspects. So helping people understand to behave responsibility, that is one. And the second thing was about just ensuring that they have things that they need to survive, like be it oxygen or injections or whatever.
mm.
So I think that's been a little more difficult in the second year compared to last year.
For sure. And obviously, we we didn't think last year that it get even worse. And someone was
Yeah.
telling me how, can you imagine now people are almost wishing for 2020 again? So
Yes.
in many ways, you're
Yes.
right. I think livelihood was the main concern there. Today, life is the main concern. So thank you for
Yes.
your part, Rashmi, in all of this. And from all of us here at One Future Collective, you are the real, like, absolute heroes. We don't like the word COVID warriors because of the war metaphor, but really, this is thank you for your ongoing sort of strength and determination to support with so much positivity in the face of so much challenge. So, thank you from all of us and from all our audiences who are watching. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and close today. If you have any final words of wisdom or just a wish for us, you have the last word.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story. And, I hope that all of us have something in us to contribute. So we just make sure that we use that effectively. So time should never be a constraint for that. And thank you, One Future Collective, for all the work that you're doing. This is amazing. It's needed a lot because physical trauma is something that people will take care, but mental
Hmm.
trauma, they will never. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.